spaces and in office buildings, etc. And everything that comes with it, like little kids coming running around, or pets jumping in the background, or other usual disasters happening in such circumstances. Perfect introduction. Let me add a bit more about myself. So maybe trying a bit to explain why I think I can actually talk about this topic. So you all heard, my name is Sascha. I'm very happy to be here. And we as 3SS are very happy to work with Agile Hub and sponsor this event and help the IT community in such in general. About myself, it doesn't feel like that, but quite a while ago, I was born in Vienna, Austria. So it feels much shorter than it actually is according to the calendar. And in 2011, I actually decided to move to Brașov here in Romania. So that's why I'm here, and I'm still here. So I like it quite a lot. And even though it's hard to believe for myself, in the meantime, I'm father of 2 kids. I honestly don't know how this happened. I mean, technically, of course I know. I mean, I was there, but you know what I mean. Sometimes you look back and you just see how time is flying and suddenly you have 2 kids. They're both adorable, they're both awesome, they're both very lovable, and of course, very annoying if you want to have meetings and work at home. What I did in this period, from a professional point of view, was to focus very much on how people can work better, either as individuals or in organizations. This organization could be small, like teams, or really large, like whole companies, enterprises, etc. To do so, I took a deep dive into 3 different topics. The first one is organizational excellence. So how really to get to this level where an organization is high performing and still fun to be part of. So not just to work like a slave, but also to enjoy it and know why you're doing it. The second topic is about business intelligence. This sounds a bit fancy, but the idea is simply that I try to find out what kind of things can and should be measured in order to achieve this organizational excellence. And this also includes measurements, so to speak, about how people feel about certain things. So it's not just dry numbers and money and profits. It's very much about the soft side and people as well. And the third topic in this context is agile leadership, which helps a lot with making these things happen. So leadership, very different from management, of course, and agile, very different from traditional approaches, help in this context a lot. What makes it easier to do so is the fact that I'm a so-called certified SAFe program consultant, and an agile coach. So I do have the education in the background, which helps me a bit to understand agile better and to apply it in real life. And at the same time, still remain agile myself and learn every day something new, if I'm being honest. Now coming to 3SS, where I'm currently working, here I'm taking care of 2 topics which normally you wouldn't find unified in a single person. This is about HR and IT. The reason why I can do this is because in each of these areas, I have awesome teams, and I'm not exaggerating, they are absolutely fantastic, who actually allow me to take care of these 2 different topics together with them. Having this combination makes it actually easier to achieve these things that I mentioned before, to actually be able to tackle these 3 topics, right? Because especially if you want to do organizational changes, process changes, and then eventually, because this is what you're all aiming for, cultural changes, this is a very nice combination. In whatever time remains between all these things, I like to read a lot and play a little, or sometimes the other way around, depending on the mood. Now, there you go. Now you know pretty much everything about me, and it did not even take too long. So what I would really like to do in this next 60 to 90 minutes is to talk with you and not to you. So I would really like if this could become some sort of interactive session. Yes, I did prepare slides because it's quite possible that nobody wants to talk to me. So I am prepared to keep talking for this period, but I would really prefer if you also engaged a bit, either via the chat. I will try to keep an eye on it, and Camilla is helping me there. Or if you feel like it, just speak up, and I will be happy to engage in discussions, answer questions whenever they come to mind. All right, so what we want to talk about is a bit what many people refer to as the new normal, right? And in this context, the current situation with COVID-19, of course, posed several challenges for us at 3SS, you, I would strongly assume, and everybody else, basically. Today, I would like to look at some of those and share our solutions for them. I'm not saying that these are the best solutions ever and that they might work for everybody, but I think it's nice to share things that actually worked for us, hoping that 1 or 2 of these things could actually inspire other people to also be successful with them. Now, I don't know about you, but the more I talk to people, especially in the more recent past, since the second wave of coronavirus cases came up, I get the impression that everything simply sucks, right? I mean, feel free to disagree, but this is somehow the sentiment I feel from people. Some go out there and say it openly, others more between the lines, but somehow this is the impression I'm getting from these discussions. And it's not a big surprise, right? Because we have the whole world suffering a huge pandemic, largest in 100 years, and still no end in sight. Yes, there is now some hopeful news about some vaccines, but let's be honest, until they're really working and reliable, it will still take a while. So we still have to grind through the current situation together. At the same time, we have a global economy which is tanking, right? It's reeling everywhere. Work is not going as it should. Unless you happen to be a shareholder in pharmaceutical companies nowadays, probably you don't have much fun at the stock exchange. And more importantly, real people are very much affected by this. So I'm not so much worried about the stock exchange anyway, but actual people who need daily work and need to get their income together are really suffering from this. So yeah, it kind of sucks. And last but not least, we find out that the well-established and partially at least appreciated ways of working together, of collaborating together, are simply not working anymore. No, we cannot come back to the office at the moment. We cannot meet together. We can't see each other. We can't joke stupidly around. And we kind of miss it, I suppose, or at least many people do. So what we're seeing is that organizations and individuals are wondering, how do we deal with this new normal? How do we remain productive? And how do we collaborate in this time of social distancing and remote work? Now, I would like to spend this time presenting solutions for the pandemic and the world economy. This would be really awesome. Unfortunately, I don't have those solutions, but what I do have is some solutions that we at 3SS found for the third part, for collaborating remotely, not just internally inside our organization, but also with our clients and external parties. In order for you to understand a bit better why we did what we did and how we did it, I have to give you a bit of background about the company itself. So this is not a recruiting video, but I think you really need to know a bit about us to appreciate the information, to understand our reasoning behind some decisions better, which I'm going to show later. So I will do this fast and short, but I have to do it anyway. All right, so 3SS itself goes back quite a long way. Why is this important in this context? Because in this last more than 2 decades, we have shown that we can adapt to changing circumstances. These changes were not always as dramatic as they are at the moment with COVID-19, but there have always been changes. And we persevered. We did not just persevere, we actually grew. So in this period, we grew to a bit more than 200 people at the moment. And when I say that we grew, then I mean we did so organically. We did not acquire other companies. We actually really hired each and every single of our colleagues manually, if you wish, and integrated them in our collective and into our organization. In terms of geography, I think this is also relevant in this context. We are distributed across 4 countries, from Germany to Romania, Ukraine, and Moldova, in a total of 6 offices. Most of them, so 3 of these 6 offices are here in Romania. Yes, there is one in Brașov. We have another one in Târgu and another one in Cluj-Napoca. Again, why is this relevant? Because we will see later at the main challenges that I'm going to look at that geography plays a big part in this discussion. Okay, what these 200 people are actually doing is building software, quite simply. So if you don't want to remember anything else, keep in mind that 3SS is a software company. If you're more into the details a bit, then let me tell you that these 200 people are building a framework for multi-screen solutions. What is a multi-screen solution? Basically, if you imagine starting your device, whether it's a mobile phone or your TV or your web browser, and you go to Netflix, you see a nice user interface. This is what we build. Not exactly for Netflix, but for a lot of other companies, but we are a front-end development company. In this context, we managed to establish ourselves as one of the leading providers for Android TV solutions. So we're very much focused on Android TV. We do multi-screen as well, but Android TV is really where we excel, especially for large operators. Now, why am I mentioning this in this context? Because, as I said before, the solutions that we found as in response to this challenge do not only apply to us internally, but also to these customers. And we actually help our customers with their own challenges a bit as well. These customers, and this is the last bit of information I have to give you in this context, are distributed geographically as well. Most of them are in Europe. This is also where we focus our activities, but some of them are also in North America and Latin America. Now, I think now that you know these circumstances a bit better, it's time to take a look at our main challenges, which we faced when COVID-19 hit the whole world and us, and how we actually address them. Like I said, I really don't have all the answers, but I will be happy to share what we did at 3SS to deal with this extraordinary situation. Like many other companies, we faced multiple challenges around COVID-19. The first of those was the question, how could we equip more than 200 people in 4 countries efficiently and quickly for letting them work from home? We had a bit of a head start because we always had a relatively lenient working from home policy, so people could do this already before COVID-19. But of course, having everybody working from home at the same time is a very different challenge. The second question was that our way of working has moved to be an agile way years ago. More specifically, we decided to embrace SAFe, the Scaled Agile Framework, for executing all kinds of initiatives, mostly, of course, our projects together with clients. Now, I'm not sure how familiar you are with SAFe or with agile working, but one key ingredient there is that face-to-face events are really, really important. This begins on the team level, where you have sprint planning, for example, and system reviews and retrospectives in relatively small groups on the team, but also continues to the larger or to the higher level, where you have so-called program increment planning. So it's not just a sprint of 2 weeks that you're planning, but actually a whole increment of 3 months, for example, and where you not just have one team, but all the teams working on a solution. This could be 100 and more people at the same time coming together for this workshop. And this is a face-to-face meeting, or should be. And of course, also for system demos and retrospectives on the same level with that many people. And the question for us was now, okay, we have been doing this for a while. We are used to it. Our clients are used to it. It's working really well for us, but now we can't do face-to-face anymore. So how can we keep delivering the value that our clients expect and are used to without having these face-to-face events? And then our third question, and this is in no way prioritized, was not just about our clients and the tools and the equipment and everything, but very much about our colleagues. Because we foresaw that it would be challenging, to say the least, to suddenly be working from home all day, every day. So the question was, how can we help these people to remain kind of sane, or as sane as they have been before COVID-19 at least, and still be productive, but at the same time limit or eliminate the risk of burnout. Now, many people wonder, why would anybody have the risk of burning out at home when working from home? Well, the thing is, and this we can see in real life with various studies, people working from home, against contrary belief, do not tend to be lazy. They rather tend to work more, because this line between private life and work life is getting very blurry. But we will come to this a little bit later when we address the specific challenge in detail. For now, suffice to say that I'm very happy that we did not just find answers to each of these challenges, but I really believe that we have found quite good ones. They will not be the last answer, so of course this is a continuous effort, and whatever happens, however the situation changes, we are adapting and we will keep adapting. But for now, this seems to be working. All right. Now, before we jump to these challenges, let's talk a bit about this so-called new normal. People keep talking about this, right? I see new normal in the news. I see it on social media. I hear it in discussions. And they're all referring to the fact that we seem to have been pushed into working remotely entirely unexpectedly. But that is not so. As a matter of fact, working remotely in distributed teams is not new. And I'm sure you don't need me to tell you that. It's quite likely that you experienced it yourself already. So we have been working distributed already before in teams. And yes, disclaimer here, the IT sector spearheaded this transition, and it does not apply to all domains. So not everybody who is working on site somewhere at the moment, not every profession can easily switch to working from home. Or if they were to try, it might end in disaster. But us being a software company and assuming that you guys who decided to join this call or to watch the recording are in a similar situation, disclaimer here, everything we're discussing here applies to us as a software company and can be applied to similar companies. It's not going to work for archaeologists, probably. All right, so about working remotely, as I said, we have been doing this for a long time, and it is true that the IT sector has spearheaded this transition and also the acceptance of remote work. There was a time when remote work was considered to be a lame excuse for people being lazy at home, watching Facebook all day and only taking a break to watch some YouTube videos, etc. But we know this is not the case. What we also know is that the Gallup Institute, so a fairly respected institution, has been analyzing remote work for a while. And I have to hit you here with a few numbers to give you an idea of what is actually happening and why this new normal is not all that new. And we can see that since the early 2000s, the numbers of employees working remotely has been increasing steadily. In 2020, so the survey was actually taken in August this year, so it's relatively new. It hit 49%. Almost half the people have been working from home at some point in this period. And on top of this, because as you saw before, I'm into business intelligence and data, I never trust a single number. So I have a second number to put this into context, where we see that out of these 49% working at home in 2020, at least some part of the time, more than half worked from home for 11 to 15 days. So typically you have 20 days per month as a full-time person to work, right? And what we can see is that more than half the people have been working from home, almost half the people have been working from home for more than half the total work time. Now, I would assume if we did this today, this number would obviously be much higher, but it doesn't matter because until then, it was partly by choice and partly driven by COVID. So we can see there's a huge increase from 2019 to 2020. And if you're asking me if this was driven up by the coronavirus, my answer would be yes, of course. But this is really not the point here. The point here is that the tendency and the trend to be working from home or working remotely from any place really is not new. So working in distributed teams is not the new normal. That's very much the not so new or even old normal. What happened actually because of the coronavirus is that this trend got reinforced and it got pushed to the front of the stage, into the spotlight. Suddenly, working from remote locations was not just a niche topic, but became a main topic. And that's why I think people are talking about this so much. And that's why I think people believe this is a new normal, because the majority of people had not made this experience before. So then if we have been working in distributed teams and remotely already before COVID-19, then what is actually new? Because something is new, right? And why is there so much fuss about it? Well, let's take a look at it. So pre-corona, which is actually not that long ago, although it feels much longer to be honest, when we're working remotely, we did so in distributed teams, and this used to mean that multiple teams work together towards a common goal without having to be in the same location. However, what usually was the case is that the members of each team used to be co-located. So you have an example here, us, 3SS on the one side, the client on the other side. Each of us has multiple teams working together internally in each organization, and they also collaborate across the different organizations. Right? So this is how we used to have it. We have a number of teams on each side working inside their respective organizations and collaborating. In our case, for this cross-organizational collaboration here, we have already been using agile methods, the scaled agile framework more specifically, with various face-to-face events, with various artifacts that have been created and shared, etc. But in general, these teams on our side and on theirs used to work at their respective offices or in some sort of professional work environment, right? Yes, there was, as I said before, a part of working at home already, but in general, and the majority of people for the majority of time used to work from some sort of office, mostly together with their team members at the same location. I say mostly because not just in our case, but in general, it's of course true that not all team members are co-located all the time, but mostly they used to be. So this is what we saw and what we experienced before the coronavirus hit the world. These agile methods, which I mentioned before, include this program increment planning workshop or PI planning workshop. If you're not familiar with these terms and I'm not making them clear enough, feel free to interrupt me. I will be happy to explain them. We have enough time for it, so don't worry about that part. If there's anything you would like me to explain better, just speak up. A PI planning workshop is a high energy workshop. It's a place where all the teams that are working together with all the team members come physically into one location for 2 full days, right? So I would like to spend a few minutes on this topic because it's really important to point out this difference between how it used to be and how it is nowadays. What happens at the PI planning workshop is that all these people together build a plan for the next increment, which is typically 3 months. So why is this such a high energy workshop and why is it so helpful and important? Why is SAFe putting so much emphasis on it? The answer is because this is one of the very few occasions where you really have everybody together. Everybody, including the client or the business owner, depending whether it's an external or internal project. All the teams, doesn't matter if they're developer and all the team members, from developers to requirement engineers to testers to product owners to scrum masters, everybody is there. And in these 2 days, they really focus on making clear what it is they can do and can achieve in the next 3 months. And then whatever all these people together decide to be the plan for the next 3 months gets committed. Now, this is a huge difference compared to how it used to be or how it sometimes still is in traditional approaches. So not in an agile approach, where very often some sort of super smart manager or a project manager or a customer or somebody who thinks to know everything tells the team in the next 3 months, you have to do this and this and this and this, bam, that's it. The difference should be obvious. One of the major things is that in the old approach, somebody tells a group of people who most likely know the topic much better and are the actual experts what to do and what can be done. Whereas in the agile approach, the actual experts take a look and tell the customer what is reasonably possible. So old approach, very difficult for the team to commit because within a day or latest a week, they will realize that this is actually not working and it's just crap. On the other hand, committed plan made by the team and therefore supported by the team. And this works insanely well. If you have never been in a PI planning workshop, I strongly recommend to participate in one. If you can't do it in your own project because you're not using this approach, try to find one. If you want, we will be happy to invite you to one of ours at some point when we can do them in person again. It's a fantastic event. It creates a lot of energy, it creates a committed plan, and what you get at the end is something like this, right? So this is the outcome of 2 days of intense collaboration, of identifying dependencies, eliminating impediments, etc. This is what we call a program board. And if you have never seen one, very briefly, you have here on the left vertically all the teams. On the right, you have columns for the different sprints. And then basically each team by themselves puts into each intersection what they're actually going to work on at the respective sprints, right? And these sprints, each of them is 2 weeks. Then you have 5 or 6 sprints, which gives you this 3 months period. And just as importantly, you actually see dependencies between things. So these red lines here, these indicate that an item here depends very much on an item here. So if this doesn't get done, then this will not get done either. So enough about SAFe and program boards in this detail. My key message here is that this event is the most important one in SAFe for getting things done, for getting a proper plan and sticking to it. And now we can't do this anymore. How does the current reality look like? Well, we still have us as 3SS here, and we still have clients, fortunately. Anything else would be a bit difficult. But overall, COVID-19 has changed this radically. The teams actually had to break up into one-person cells, I would like to call it. Not just on our side, but also on the client side. And each of these cells is physically isolated from the others. So yes, they're still in the same organization, but it's a very virtual organization. You don't have this feeling of belonging anymore, right? You are not going to the office anymore, meet with your colleagues, have a nice coffee, do stupid jokes, etc. No, nowadays, you ideally change from your nice pajamas, at least into your day pajamas. You turn on your PC, you turn off your camera, hopefully, and you start working. So all this banter and this social interactions between people is missing completely. And then the second thing that changed dramatically, if you remember, we said before that we had distributed teams where the team members used to be co-located in an office environment. Well, now we have these isolated one-person cells, and they're not even in an office environment more. Instead, they were basically forced out of the professional environment and now have to make do with some makeshift workplaces in, I don't know, kitchens, in living rooms, in bedrooms, on terraces if they want to smoke probably, and I don't know what. Wherever they can put a laptop, they can and are trying to work. So these, in my opinion, are the new things. Not that we're working in distributed teams, but that these teams were forced to break up and move out of professional environments into isolated single cells in private environments. And this might have been interesting in the beginning, might even have sounded like it could work nicely and could be a good idea for a while. But as far as we can see now, is really starting to take a toll. I will come to this a bit later. So working from home sounds appealing to many people. I'm one of them. I've been working from home since a long time before Corona. And to be completely honest, I'm not the most social person. So if it were not for this latent risk of catching a potentially lethal virus, this setup is close to my ideal case. Right? It's close to my ideal scenario, but it's just me and not true for everybody. So in any case, even if you like working from home, it's like with everything else. The related benefits come at a price. They come at a price for both the employer and the employee. You remember what I showed you before, the picture of the PI planning workshop with all these people running around and being interactive and so on? Well, nowadays it looks like this, right? So you have still people on the call, you have cameras and so on, you can work together, but it's just not the same. Just the fact that in such a setup with video calls, yes, the technology is awesome, you can see, you can make funny backgrounds, it's all nice, but it's just not the same dynamic. So first of all, typically only one person can really speak to be understood, whereas in the face-to-face setup, you usually get splinter groups, right? There's a group of, I don't know, a tester and a developer breaking out, discussing a specific problem. Over there is a software architect with the business owner trying to explain why he doesn't understand the thing that he's talking about. You don't have all this. It's a much more restricted way of working together, which is also why technically it works and you still get results. It's not near as efficient as the face-to-face one. As a last comparison, this planning board we saw before, which looked like super handmade and nice, and you could kind of see that people put effort into it. Nowadays looks like this, right? Again, information is the same. We have what we want to do in which iteration, which sprint, we have dependencies. Everything is technically and formally, yes, as it should be, but you kind of lack this enthusiasm factor. You lack this drive that you get when you're interacting with other people and working towards a common goal. So I wanted just to show these two things to make this difference between how it used to be before coronavirus and how it is nowadays a bit clearer. So I fear I might have confused you a bit and you might have forgotten about the main challenges. So here they are again as a bit of an overview. And now we're really going to tackle each and every one of them in turn. Until now, before I jump into them, would you have any questions? Is there anything unclear?
Sascha, IP, it's coming from what? Product increment or?
Yeah, PI is the program increment, correct.
Program increment, okay.
So, and like I said, this is basically just a series of sprints. In our case, it's usually 6 sprints, and each sprint has 2 weeks. So 6 times 2 gives us 12 weeks, which is 3 months for a program increment. Yes, good question.
But you're not delivering every sprint something? You're delivering every, okay, but it's a big release, let's say, or what?
It doesn't really matter. So the things, it's a very good question, and if it's okay for everybody, I would like to take a few minutes to answer it, because it needs to be put in context as well. So yes, we do deliver at the end of each sprint. So like everybody else working with Scrum, for example, or similar methods, the goal of each sprint is to deliver value to the customer, right? This is also why at the end of each sprint, we have a system demo and we show the customer what we actually achieved in this period. The same is true at the end of the increment. It's just that at the end of the increment, it's a much larger demo, which includes all the different components in an integrated environment. So while at the end of the sprint, a team might show a component that they did or a part of the solution that they did, at the end of the increment, we would show the whole solution with everything that all the different teams did integrated already. Make sense?
Yes, thanks. Clear.
All right, cool. Okay, so talking about these main challenges. Let's start with the first one. 200 people, 4 countries, 6 offices. How could everybody start working from home? So like I said, we had a bit of a head start. We always had people working from home, but this was different. Suddenly, we had to plan and arrange for everybody working from home, and not just a few days a week or a few days a month, but constantly. I have to add that we started working on this before it was actually necessary. So when COVID-19 hit, we started reacting to this, I think in early February, if I'm not mistaken, and very quickly realized that we might well be facing such a situation soon. So we started preparing quite early. We also were ready with it before people actually had to stay at home before the first lockdown. So how could we do that? First and foremost, most important thing in this context was once again, our IT team. So for these 200 people across all these locations, we have an IT team of, I would say, 3.5 people, including myself a bit there. So it's a very, very small team for so many people, especially if you consider that there are these distances between the different offices as well. And without those guys and their commitment, it simply could not have been done. What they did is they decided to coordinate the whole effort centrally, which of course makes sense in our case, especially with such a small team, but to decentralize everything around purchasing equipment and delivering it to the people, to each person's home. So simple example, if we were to buy devices here in Romania and had to ship them to Ukraine, shipping itself would have been much more expensive than the devices, and there would have been a potential delay, which we cannot really calculate with customs, etc. That's also a bit of a pain, right? Getting things out of the EU into third parties. So decentralize the planning and the coordination, they decentralize the purchasing and delivery. We got help from colleagues on site, because if you do the math, with 3.5 people in 6 offices, obviously we don't have an IT person in every office. So we asked and relied on help from our colleagues, and they were very helpful there. They were happy to help as well. And so we could really execute this relatively quickly. The way we did execute it was, again, falling back on our experience from agile methods and methodologies. So obviously, this is not a software project or a development project where agile ideas could be applied 100%, but we saw and we thought, and we actually proved that the idea, some of the ideas of agile methods could be used in this project as well. As an example, we did daily stand-ups, right? So if you're doing Scrum or something similar, you know that during a sprint, every day, there's kind of 15-minute meeting or call nowadays, where you just talk about 3 questions. So what did you do since the last call or meeting? What are you going to do until the next one? And is there anything keeping you from making progress? Are there any impediments? And we did exactly the same thing, just not for software development, but for purchasing devices, for shipping devices, for finding out what certain people need. This is also the reason why I explained before a bit, what we are doing at 3SS. So we are building front ends for all kinds of devices. But this also means that we have to give developers and testers the possibility to work and test these solutions on all kinds of devices. Now, if you have an office where all these people are, you have a test lab, so do we, where we have, I don't know how many devices that can be used. But if suddenly everybody's in their own home, that's not going to fly. Yes, you can work a bit with VPN connections to the office and try to use the test lab, but it's really not working all that well. So suddenly we needed way more devices and had to ship them to people as well. So we use these agile ideas there as well. What we also did is that we invested very early and heavily, I have to admit, into getting all these equipment. The reason being that we thought, okay, probably sooner or later, other people might run into similar situations, and then they will also need a lot of equipment, and maybe by then it will take longer for us to get what we need. So we started early, because it's not just about special devices, which might be somewhat unique to our own domain, but it's also about normal things like laptops and Wi-Fi routers and TV sets, set-top boxes, etc. So we started early there. And in this approach, with this approach, we did actually manage to get these 200 people in all these locations to be fully up and running for working from home within less than 2 weeks. And if you think about it, you will have to confirm, or I hope you will confirm, that this is a huge achievement. So once again, I was not exaggerating when I said before that I have an excellent team in IT and in HR. This example proves that the IT team in this case indeed is an excellent one. All right, what we also did was to prepare or try to prepare and plan ahead for various scenarios. One of these scenarios, again, related to availability of hardware. So during the whole year, also during the lockdown and everything, we kept hiring people. So we kept growing. I think in total this year, we hired approximately 30 people, which if you put it in relation to the total size of our organization is quite a lot. So basically 15% of the people we have at the moment were hired this year. And for those guys, of course, we need hardware. No? When you join our company, you get, I don't know, laptop, you get accessories, you get a screen, you get a desk, all this stuff that you need to actually work. And for this, we also prepared. In this case, the solution was, of course, to buy these items early, which required us to have a kind of idea how many people we expect to join us in this year, buy the items and devices early, put them on stock in our own premises, and then use them from there. And it was a good thing we did, because we saw in April that indeed delivery delays happened. So hardware suppliers could not deliver new laptops because the factories creating the chips in China were shut down because everybody had to stay at home. So once again, planning ahead helped us in this context a lot. So this is how we did that. And this was the initial effort, of course. This was the first step. And since then, we have been supporting our colleagues at their workplaces, home workplaces, continuously. So when somebody has an internet problem at home, they're not calling DG anymore, they're calling our IT team and similar situations. So once again, this was only the first step, but is an ongoing effort. All right, regarding the second challenge related to collaboration efficiency, about the face-to-face events, which we couldn't do anymore. The keyword in this context is something called business agility. So we have been talking about agile quite a bit so far, but whenever we did, we were talking about doing projects or developing software in an agile way. Well, there's also something called business agility. And the idea is very much the same as with projects and with software development. The idea is to be and to remain agile as an organization, as a business, in order to react to changing circumstances quickly and without having to panic, ideally. And this is what we as an organization have been doing for a while. This is why I said we have been around for more than 20 years. We haven't been agile for the first 10 or 12 probably, or even 15. But after that, we started going this direction, but now we fully embraced the idea. Now there's something called the Agile Manifesto. If you don't know it, don't worry about it. It's basically a bunch of software developers came together in the early 2000s, 2001 to be precise, and said, okay, guys, the way we are building software at the moment is simply not working. There has to be a better way. and they came up with a few principles and one or a few statements. One of these statements says that the most efficient and effective method of conveying information is a face-to-face conversation. So this is what we said before, and this is the idea or this principle that SAFE actually takes to the next level with this PI planning workshop, and to a lower extent, but still with all the other events that are supposed to happen face-to-face. So we have been using SAFE for years, as I said, and one of the core concepts there is always to try and work in a way that allows our people, our teams, and our organization to quickly adapt to these changing circumstances. So this is the idea of this business agility. We completely took this to heart. So it was not too hard for us actually to adapt our processes from working like that, face-to-face around the table with all the people around us, to an approach where we take these meetings and these activities online. In order to do so, we actually adapted the agenda of the respective meetings, of the respective events. For example, on the team level, we have the daily stand-up, the sprint planning, the demo and retrospective, of course. What we did there is we replaced, of course, coming together face-to-face with video calls. This was not 100% replacement because partially we did this already before, since not everybody was always at the same location, but now it was 100% video calls. We started using online collaboration tools more intensively. Once again, we had them before, but we didn't really need them all that much. But now with this situation, we really had to get there and focused on finding a good one, which worked for us. I will come to the respective tools a bit later. And screen sharing became extremely important, obviously. If you want to show something to people, then there is no better way nowadays than to do it with screen share. And what I didn't put here, but what was super important in context with the video calls, is to really actually use the camera. So in the beginning, this felt a bit weird for people to always turn on the camera and during the calls, but by now it's very much normal behavior, and it feels weirder if you don't do it anymore. So we even have situations where, I don't know, there's a bunch of people in a call and one or two of them don't turn on the camera and the others actually ask them to do so because they would like to see them. On the level of multiple teams, so on the program level, where you have potentially 50, 100, whatever people working together, we did a similar approach. I said before that the PI planning is a 2-day workshop if you do it face-to-face. Now, imagine being in a workshop that really requires you to focus and to work and to collaborate for 2 full days in front of your screen. This is not working. People cannot focus for this time. They cannot really think in a constructive way for that long. It's simply exhausting. And this is not even considering yet that most likely somewhere next to you, or if you're lucky, outside the next door, if you have a separate room, there are kids jumping around, or your spouse is getting impatient because she hasn't seen you in 8 hours since you disappeared into your workplace. So what we did was following the recommendations of Scaled Agile, and so instead of 2 full days, we actually do 3 or even 4 partial days. So 4 half days seems to be a good approach. It seems to be working. It's also something that our clients expressed, and simply take half days. It's easier to plan, it's easier to schedule. It also allows people to still catch up with the other work, which is not pausing in the meantime. So people still have questions and have other things to do. And in this way, they can do that. Otherwise, of course, the video call is the tool of choice. What we also do in this context is to set up breakout sessions. Now for this, you need a tool that supports this. I know there are multiple out there. We decided to take one. Breakout sessions will allow us that we have a general call where the whole group is in there, say 50, 60, 70 people. And then we have multiple breakout sessions where the respective teams can go and discuss their topics and sprint planning and features and dependencies in detail before they come back together. And once again, of course, the online collaboration tool.
Sascha?
Yes.
We have a question.
Yes.
Somebody from the audience asks you, how were you able to implement turning on camera? This is one of the toughest things to achieve when working from home. And online schools and so on and so on.
Yep. It's a very good question. And I don't think we have 100% saturation yet. So we still have a few very stubborn people who simply don't want to share it on. And to be honest, we don't force people, obviously. So what we always try to do, not just with this topic, is not to force people with policies or rules or anything, but actually to encourage them by explaining why it makes a lot of sense. So this is what we did. We tried to explain to people, because we don't see each other. We don't know exactly when we can see each other. I mean, we had a bit of hope during summer when people were allowed to go back to the office, right? But now it looks like we are again entering a stricter lockdown phase. So the only way to actually see and still keep in touch is by turning on the cameras. And like I said, we have groups where we have a bit of peer pressure already. When we have a call with multiple people and if you are not turning it on, the other people actually ask them to do so. And there are very, very few people who would not react to such a request if it comes from peers, from their colleagues. It does not work if some sort of manager steps in and says, you have to turn it on. Another thing that we did when this whole thing started and when it was kind of new to people to constantly have the camera on was a bit of a, how do you call it? A kind of a challenge, if you like. Because nowadays you can do these nice background pictures, right? So I also have one. This is not my real room, believe it or not. And we made a bit of a competition, actually. We said, okay, guys, there is this feature now. You can do virtual backgrounds. You can even do your own. You don't have to pick the ones which are provided by the respective tool. And let's make some nice pictures with your respective background. And this also helps there. So the answer is, it's a combination of trying to gamify it, trying to make it fun, and getting people to actually encourage each other. It does not work top down. It does not work if the manager goes in there and says, okay, I'm here, you have to turn on your cameras. On the other hand, if you are in some sort of leadership position and you don't turn on your own camera, well, then obviously you can hardly convince anybody else to do it. It's, as with so many other things, it's the leading by example that makes a difference here.
Before Ovidiu will ask you the next question, which he wrote here, I would like to ask you something. Was there a starting point, let's say, when you were the only one with your camera turned on and the rest of them, the camera turned off?
Well, me specifically, I was actually one of the late adopters, to be honest. So I turned on my camera frequently. So I reached the point of always turning on my camera relatively late. But even before coronavirus, we actually encouraged people already. And in our organization, we are loosely organized. There's no strict hierarchy as such, but we have so-called department leads. And like with any change that you want to implement, it helps to get a team, a kind of critical mass that helps you carrying the change into the organization. So what we did was we tried to convince the department lead to turn on their cameras when they have calls and give an example to everybody else. And since these department leads are very well-respected people, others emulated them. So even before coronavirus, we already started this initiative and people were getting on board, but of course not to the same extent to which we have it now.
Okay, thank you. And there is another question. So the thing is that even if there is a case when only you are having your camera on and it hurts, keep doing it and take on the hurt, because little by little it will pay off.
Yes. So most people don't really have a problem with the camera when it's on. They have a problem being the only one or the first one or one of the few to do so. So it's always when you reach a bit of a critical mass, right? So when everybody does it, it feels normal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There is another question. If there are people who have not seen it, how many agile release trains do you have? And there's another question. Yeah.
Yes. So I think at the moment it's 7 or 8, if I'm not mistaken. Don't nail me on that one because I'm not deeply involved there, but I think it's 7 or 8. But I have to explain that our release trains are not 100% internal. So on each of these release trains, we have external parties as well, like clients, suppliers, etc. And do we have a blazer on top, PJs on the bottom policy? So no, you don't have to be PJs, have to wear PJs on bottom. You can, wear whatever you want. The only condition is if it's something highly inappropriate, turn off the camera before you stand up. So in general, no, there is no policy as such, but it's a very good question, all kidding aside. And I will come back to this a bit later today. This idea of having, as I said before, nice pajamas and day pajamas, basically, that people tend to follow or want to follow because it's comfy and everything, is very tempting, but it does not help you. It does not help you as an individual. And I will explain later a bit why this is the case. All right. So yeah, this is how we do virtual collaboration in real life. In continuation, yeah, in terms of online tools, as I said, I have here some tools that we are using. Again, I want to stress this. I'm not claiming that these are the best tools or the only tools. I know there are a lot of others out there for each of these areas, but these are the ones that we are using, that we know are working for us. So it's completely up to you to use something else, to take a look at those or not. For me, it does not make any difference. I just want to share what we know to be working for us. All right. So for all online meetings, whether it's a one-to-one call or a group call with a team or a company-wide call with all 200 people, we use Microsoft Teams. So we're not into Zoom, we're into Teams. Doesn't matter in the end, it's simply working. Why did we opt for Teams? Maybe as an explanation. Because we're not just using it for these kind of calls, we use it for everything or a lot of other things. We use it for instant messaging, of course, because you have threaded messaging similar to Slack. You also have a lot of other features that you use in there in terms of file sharing, file collaboration, wikis, meeting notes, etc. It integrates very nicely with everything else in Office 365, which we use. So if you're already part of the, I would call it Microsoft ecosystem, then using Microsoft Teams is very, very beneficial. And for us, this is the case. For the actual sprint and PI planning, apart from Microsoft Teams or on top of it, we use this online collaboration tool called Miro. Again, I know there are others. This is the one that works well for us, and is also the one that our clients are using, or most of our clients are using. So it makes collaboration, exchanging ideas very, very easy. If you don't know any of these tools, maybe a short explanation. These tools like Miro or Mural or others basically provide everything you would normally find in a meeting room in terms of flip charts, post-its, whiteboards, different pens, shapes, etc. And they allow many people at the same time to work on this Miro or on this workboard together. So it's super nice to work on this if you do creative sessions like brainstorming or PI planning and quickly want to come to results. It's really, really nice. The results of these planning sessions, in our case, go into Jira, where we track all the user stories, the features, the bugs, the issues that pop up over time. And last but not least, for estimating our user stories, we are using a planning poker tool online. It's not planningpoker.com in our case, it's Planit Poker. So that's a bit confusing, but that's the one we are trying to use. Okay, then for the actual backlog grooming. So when you're working agile, you have a backlog of ideas, right? You have a bunch of things that are supposed to get done at some point, but have not been planned yet in a sprint or in a PI. So it's still there, and this backlog needs to be groomed, because initially everybody dumps their ideas in there and it's a bit of a mess. But then there are people like the product manager and the product owner who go through these ideas and start putting better descriptions there, start putting priorities there. And this is backlog grooming. We do this in Confluence. Why are we using Confluence? Well, because we're already using Jira, and Confluence is a very well integrated sister product. So these two go hand in hand. For the reviews and demos, we basically use Microsoft Teams and, if necessary, some external cameras. So during the system review and demo, what we want to do is we want to show the client or the customer what it is that we actually did during the previous period, as we said before. And since we are building interfaces for TVs, what we also do is we simply point the camera from a laptop or an external camera to the actual TV set, and therefore can show directly on the TV what is happening and how it's working. This is something that clients really, really like, because it's not just an emulator or some other simulation where we can always claim it's working, but you really see it on the actual device. For retrospectives, where we try to get better, so continuous and relentless improvement is a core pillar in SAFe. in retrospectives, you're dealing with 3 questions, usually at the end of each sprint and at the end of each PI. You basically ask what went well and shall we keep doing, what didn't go so well, and what exactly specifically in terms of actions are we going to do in the next period. Now, as with all things and with all changes, behaviors had to change, right? And people had to get used to new tools partly. And for this, people need time. There is this thing called the learning curve, right? And typically this applies to pretty much everything. Whenever you start to get into a new topic or a new tool, doesn't matter. At first, you're kind of enthusiastic because you don't know much about it and it might be interesting, so it looks like fun. Then you hit the bump usually where you think, okay, actually this is a bit hard, but doesn't matter. I don't know yet how it's working, but I keep doing, and suddenly I get it. And this is the place where people sometimes get stuck because they think they have mastered the domain or the topic or the tool. But the problem is, at this point, they might feel like they have learned a lot, but they don't know how much there still is to learn. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, or as I call it, the smartest factor. People here think they know everything and they know it better than anybody else. But this is based on a lot of ignorance, not knowing how much they actually don't know. Anyway, if you're not one of these people, you realize that actually, no, you don't know everything yet. And then there is something we call the valley of despair, right? You get kind of desperate because you realize, I thought I'm so good, but actually I don't know anything. Once again, if you persevere, it starts to make sense. Then you have your first unexpected successes, and eventually you really master something. Now, this sounds long, but this timeline here, in our case, for all these tools and with our people, it was very short. The curve was the same. It was just a bit compressed, if you like. Okay, I see we have a few questions here. Did we notice any frustration levels going up due to the lack of face-to-face communication collaboration? Yes. Yes, we did, and yes, we do. Is again one of the topics I'm going to tackle a bit later, but the quick answer is yes, we certainly do. And I will also talk a bit later about what we're trying to do to eliminate or reduce this frustration.
Thank you.
Do you use normalized story points for estimations or something else? If you're using something else, can you give us some details on it? First answer is yes, second answer is no. So yes, we use, well, the first answer is almost. We do use story points, but they're not normalized. If you mean we've normalized across the different projects. Within a project, a story point is, actually, sorry, my bad. Within a team, a story point is defined, right?
Yeah, so basically the reason why I'm asking is because let's say the recommendation from SAFE is to use normalized story points. In the project that I've done last year, we were actually using the standard, but I was really interested to see how others do it, and that's why I'm really curious about what system do you actually use, you know, because you have to spread it across multiple teams.
Yes, so yes, we do use story points, but no, they're not normalized across the teams. The reason behind it is that each and every team performs differently from each other, and what looks like a user story with 5 story points to team A might look like a user story with 8 story points for team B. It depends a lot on, first of all, how big the team is, not how big the team is, sorry, how experienced the team is and how well they work together already. Because if you have a very inexperienced team or people who start working together for the very first time, if it's the very first sprint or the second sprint, for example, you will always have some friction. They are not going to be as efficient as they will be a few sprints down the road. That's why we don't normalize them. It's once again this idea that we think the teams should define what a story point means for them in general, specifically, and then over time learn from it and adapt their capacity and velocity based on the history from previous sprints.
So when it comes to splitting the feature, basically you just add up all the story points that every team puts in.
Exactly.
Right? Okay, and that is a little bit adjusted over time.
Yes. So basically at the end of each sprint, we do this review, as I said, and there we see, we planned, I don't know, say to do 50 story points in this sprint. We actually achieved 52 or 45 or whatever it is. And then we take a look at the history. to try and get a bandwidth in which we always are, even in bad sprints or in good sprints. It's all about the predictability towards the client, right? So how reliable is it when a team tells me today they are going to do 50 story points in the next 2 weeks? Can I believe this as a client, or do I not really trust it?
Okay, I have another question about budgeting, but maybe it's not necessarily in the scope here.
Well, what we can do is we have a Q&A session later. So if you want, keep it on your mind, or put it in the chat, or keep it somewhere. And then if there is enough time, I will be more than happy to talk about budgeting as well.
Yeah, I'll jot it down.
All right. Okay, so this was our second challenge, right? How can we make people, how can we keep delivering value without these face-to-face events? And this is what we did. And are all these measures working? Yes, they are. We still get results and it is working. Our clients, of course, are also used to it by now. Are they as productive and efficient as safe-to-safe workshops and meetings? Nope, of course not. I mean, they cannot be. But I have to say that by now, they are fairly close. And it's not just about us, not because we are so good at this, but as I said, also because our clients got used to this and are also into this. I mean, it's a global pandemic, so we are all affected by it. We're all in the same boat, basically, and we all have to find ways to make it work. So I think this pressure actually made it easier to transition to this kind of working, also with third parties and clients, because they have the exact same problems, and together a solution is much easier than individually. And in the end, of course, it's much better to do all these events like that than not doing them at all. I also want to point out very quickly that Scaled Agile, so the company behind Scaled Agile framework, was very fast and reacted very quickly to the situation and provided new online tools, guidelines, templates, etc., that could be used by everybody to make these events even smoother. So this was also supported by them quite well. Okay, our third challenge, and honestly, this is the biggest one, in my opinion. It's about not just work-life balance, but actually remote work-life balance. And I split it here in two parts. One thing is what employers can do, and the other one, obviously, is what employees can do. Let's start with the employers a bit. And again, this is no in particular order. It's not prioritized or anything. All these things need to be done, in my opinion. But I will start with equipment. So yes, employers are supposed to equip their people to be able to work from home. Does it look like this for our employees? Not as far as I know. I mean, it would be awesome. I would be the first one to go for such a chair. I mean, honestly, how cool is that? But yeah, it's not really the case. Nevertheless, being a bit more realistic, as I said before, of course, we equip our people with a lot of hardware, with a lot of setup, with a lot of effort to make things work. And as an employer, there's simply no way around it. I don't think there's a single company out there, or at least I hope there is not, who did not do something like this for their employees in our domain. Second thing is, employers have to provide flexibility to employees. It's not easy to be at home 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with or without kids. With kids, it's probably a bit harder even, but without kids, it's also a strain. It's not easy. Therefore, employers need to give people the flexibility they need as far as they can. So not every job allows you to rearrange your schedule. Again, in the software development industry, I think we're kind of lucky in this context because we have a bit more flexibility than other domains. It is possible for us, maybe not every day, but some days, to say, okay, this afternoon, I'm not going to work because I really need to spend time with my kids because I don't have anybody else to take care of her or him. So I will stay with the kid and I will catch up with work in the evening or at night outside normal business hours. We have this flexibility if the employer provides it, and I think the employer shall do so. We have to be careful here. This shall be an option given by the employer, should not be mandatory. So it should still be open for the employee to say, okay, this afternoon I have to take the time off because I need to take care of something and not work at night to compensate for it. It's flexibility, not mandatory. The third one that employers need to provide is trust. This goes back to this topic I mentioned before and this widespread myth that people at home are lazy and slackers and doing anything they want except work. That's really not the case. I mentioned before that we also looked at the question, how do we prevent burnout? Well, the thing is that when working from home, you lose a bit this distinction or the separation between your work and your private life. You suddenly start working on Saturday mornings, or I don't know, Sunday it's raining, so instead of going out, you keep working on a project or on a report or whatever it is that you need to finish until Monday or Tuesday. And this is sometimes not even a conscious decision. Basically, I will focus now for 1 hour and do it, but you know, you're sitting in the kitchen anyway, you turn on your laptop, you have your coffee, and you start working, and suddenly half the day is gone. So the employer needs to trust their people that they are going to work as well as they can and be as productive as they can. If we look at it, it's not so different from what an employer anyway should do with their employees, right? So I mean, even when you're coming to the office, or when we go to the office, the employer should still trust us to do what we do there, or what needs to be done. So why would it be different from working in the office when I'm working at home? The only difference is that I, as an employer, don't have the possibility to just walk by your desk and, you know, look what you're doing. Are you really working, or are you on Facebook or whatever else you're doing? But if this is a problem for me as an employer, then I need to realize that I actually have trust issues, that I don't trust the people. And if I don't trust the people, I have immediately to ask myself, okay, why did I hire them? Why would I hire somebody I don't trust to do their work? Because me as an employer who makes a decision to get people on board should make the decision knowing that these are good people technically, that these people fit with our culture and our ideas and the way that we are working, and that these are people that I can trust. So this needs to be there. Another thing, and this goes also back a bit to the question before about frustration levels, encourage fun. I cannot stress this enough. People, even when they're at the office, when they're at the office all together, they take care of this themselves usually. No, they meet each other on the floor for a coffee, they have banter, they make jokes about each other, etc. So there is always some sort of fun going on naturally without anybody trying to encourage it or without anybody trying to make it happen. Now that everybody is such a little self-isolated cell, this doesn't work anymore. So it falls to the employer to try and do something to keep this alive. It will never be the same as in real life, but there are still ways to do that. And we also try to do this. We have been trying this for months. We are still doing it. But again, we see that there is this frustration levels going up because people are still at home, and as it looks like they will have to stay at home much longer. And therefore, we see that engagement and participation in these activities is dropping. And if your question is, if anybody's typing, the question, how do we solve this? I don't know yet. I honestly don't have a recipe or a solution to turn this around. This is a development that we have been noticing for the past few weeks, maybe months, and we don't have a recipe yet to turn it around. The most recent example, we tried to organize an Halloween 2.0, right? Online Halloween party because it was end of October, etc. And we tried to get people into it. We arranged activities for the kids, with the kids, different contests or competitions, if you like carving pumpkins, drawing pictures, showing up for conference calling, costumes, etc. And a very small number of people actually participated in this. So the engagement in these activities is really dropping, especially compared to the first similar things that we did during the beginning of the first lockdown. So I don't know yet how we're going to turn it around, but once again, the HR team, one of the two excellent teams I'm working with, is thinking about this, and we're trying to find ways, especially now that we see that Christmas is coming. We don't know yet exactly what we're going to do for Christmas to get people closer together again, to encourage these fun activities. I will give a few examples about these activities a bit later, but this is definitely something that I believe employers should really focus on and should do. Last but not least, employers need to understand that humans come first. So there's again one of these statements from the HR manifesto, which says that individuals and interactions over processes and tools. So this means while processes and tools are really important to make things work and to work better, the people actually doing it and their interactions are more important than processes and tools. Processes and tools are not useless. We need those. But individuals and interactions are way more important. And it doesn't matter what company you are, if it's a 3-people company or a 20,000 people company, in the end, there are always people that actually make the organization. Therefore, take care of the people first, even if this means that you might lose in the short term productivity, that you might even lose money or similar things. My recommendation for employers, and certainly something that we at 3SS are doing, is to accept short-term losses in hard things like money, revenue, etc., for the benefit of long-term bonding, loyalty, and well-being of the people in our organization. All right, all these things, even before the coronavirus, we tried to address. The intensity has changed since then, but even before that, we tried to do so. We have 4 initiatives, I would like to say, in our company. Very quickly, something called Go Green, which is all about helping as a company and as people working with us to build a livable future, right? So make sure there is still a planet for the next generation of 3SS employees, hopefully, and then the one after that. Then we have, and I will take this one first, we have something called Go Talks, which is all about helping people grow inside our organization. So from being a junior person to becoming a senior person, or from being a QA person to, I don't know, a project manager, whatever the career path is. So we have a focused initiative and program for this as well. And then these 2 here, I want to go a bit more in detail. There's something called Go Bond, where we actively try to help people to connect with each other. Again, remember, 4 countries, 6 offices. People are very distributed, even within Romania, which is our largest contingent of people. They're distributed across 3 different offices, so it's not so easy to connect. And we try to do several things to enable this. And the third one here about being going healthy or go healthy is all about lifestyle. So this work-life balance, which I mentioned before, has not been a topic for us only since coronavirus, but long time before that. Now, I want to focus a bit on these 2, with Go Bond and Go Healthy, and what we have been doing there. So since the lockdown, we have had several challenges on our internal social platform, if you wish. We're using something called Yammer, which is basically like Facebook, but close to inside the company only. And we started doing things there like counting steps challenges, like summer running challenge, a challenge for biking, and a lot of people are engaged. So this was really the early phase of the first lockdown, because this was something that people could do individually without actually really being together, but then they contributed, they shared their results, they compared them. We even added some sort of charity note there where we said for a certain amount of steps or kilometers or whatever, we would be donating to some organization. So people also had a bit of a purpose behind it and not just a competition. Then we also helped with getting external experts talking about how to eat healthier, also how to sit and work more ergonomically at home, because chances are that when you're working from home, you don't have a perfect office desk setup, right? You probably don't have a standard office desk and a standard office chair at the right height and everything, but you probably improvise in your bedroom, maybe even directly in your bed with some pillows, etc. So we helped with nutrition, we helped with exercises, and tried to keep people fit, right, physically. What we're also doing to match this fitness on the mental side is we're trying to get a psychologist to talk. So like we had these nutrition talks with nutritionists, we're trying to get psychologists. People can chime in, can listen to the presentations, explanations, and then if they want to, and if they wish to, and if they feel the need to, they can engage with the psychologist privately. So it's nothing that we need to know or want to know. If people want to get help from there, they can do so. So a lot of things that we have been trying since the beginning of this lockdown, of this pandemic, and are still doing so. Again, let me repeat, we're currently facing the challenge that engagement is dropping, and we need to find ways how to change that. So all in all, these measures certainly helped us to get through the pandemic so far. And we will continue finding new ways also to address the issue of the dropping engagement in the future. Always with the purpose to keep our colleagues in good mental and physical shape. So the trend of working in these distributed teams, or actually now I should say cells, from remote locations has been accelerated by the COVID-19 situation. But eventually, this situation is going to be resolved, right? And the question is then, what happens then? Are we going to forget everything that we learned about working remotely and go back to the office from 9 to 5? Or what is going to be the case? Before I answer this question, let me quickly explain the other part or the other side of the coin. So not just what the employer can do, but also what we as employees can do, what all of us can do. The first thing we shall do, and ideally right now, we need to realize we are actually not working from home. What we really are is that we are at home during a crisis where we are trying to work. That's a subtle difference, but a very relevant one. And this is also underlined by the fact that a lot of people feel quite stressed when working from home. So if you look at these numbers here, they're from 2017, so they're not super recent, but the most recent ones I could find. But people who mostly work from home are fairly stressed, or 40% of the people are stressed when mostly working from home, compared to only 24% from the office. On the other hand, back in 2017, people who completely work from home are somewhere in between this 24 and 40%, that's 30%. So I think if we had done the same study in, say, mid-2019, we would have seen that working from home stress levels, or the first two bars actually to go down a bit. But if we were to do the same question today, I assume that these two bars would be very high up. I don't think there are a lot of people who have been working from home for the past, 9 months or something, and not stressed most of the time. I said in the beginning, I like working from home, but honestly, I wouldn't mind having a day, a week or something at the office every now and then. Okay, so coming to the question, what we can actually do is to establish a routine, right? So if you remember the days when you used to go to the office, there was some sort of routine. You wake up, you brush your teeth, you do your morning hygiene, you get dressed, you drink your coffee, you go to the office, and bam, your mind is in a work mode, right? At home, you don't have this unless you set up a similar routine. So what I do is I try to behave as closely as possible to a normal workday. I still get up, do everything. I actually change into real clothes, not always a shirt, that's especially for you today, but a t-shirt. And I actually try to get my mind into this work mode. And the same is true at the end of the day. I try to get my mind out of the work mode into private mode, into family mode. There is a book called Atomic Habits. I will share the links and everything, or the references later. This is a recommendation for anybody who would like to change their habits, but doesn't seem to be able to do so by themselves, or it seems to be always falling back into old patterns. The core message here is minor changes, small changes over time have a huge impact. You don't need to change a lot within a short period. You need to change a bit for a long period. Second topic is to organize your workspace. I understand that not everybody is in a situation where they have a separate room to work in or a separate desk to work in. But what you can do is you can try to organize things as well and as cleanly as possible. It makes a huge difference whether you put your laptop on the kitchen table while all the dishes are still there and I don't know, the plates are dirty and everything, or if you clean the kitchen table and have nothing there except the stuff that you need to work. That's not a huge thing to do, and you don't need a separate room or a separate desk for it, but it changes a lot. It's again about the mindset, basically. Keep it orderly, keep it clean. Wear pants. Might sound funny, but goes back to the question we had before. So no, we don't have a policy that you need to wear pants. So as far as I'm concerned, you can, go bottomless if you like. But for yourself, it's a good idea to actually get dressed, and actually get dressed in something that you would also wear to the office, not just from night pajamas to day pajamas. So it sounds nice to run around in pajamas all day long, but it does not help you, especially not after such a long time of having to work from home. You need to find ways to get into this mindset to actually work, and getting dressed is one of them. Then last but not least, ask for help. Ask for help from anybody who actually can help you, whether this is a family member or a friend, whether it's about, I don't know, shopping or taking care of daily routines or watching the kids for a few hours, or whether it's on the business side. Do not be afraid to ask somebody in your organization to help you if you need help. This is something we try to really stress in 3SS. Again, not only now, but in general. So in 3SS, we have this setup where every person has a mentor. So whenever you have a problem, you can go to this person. It does not matter what it is, whether it's a technical issue or a personal thing. If you feel like you need help, go there. If for whatever reason you don't want to talk to this mentor or he's not available, everybody else in the organization will be happy to help you. Whether this is somebody from the HR team or somebody from the management team, there is no reason why you shouldn't ask. There's nothing to be ashamed. If you need help, ask for it. This is really something we all can do. I understand that out of these four, the last one is probably the hardest one, but it's also the one that can really help in keeping you sane. So in consequence, this I am at work mindset, this is what you're looking for. This is what you want to achieve. And the few things that I mentioned now can help you with this. But I think if you try to find quiet 5 minutes on the weekend or 10 minutes and simply think about what is the thing that would really help me, one thing only, to get into this mindset, I'm sure you will come up with more ideas than these four. Now, how is the future going to look like, right? So probably not like this. I mean, it's tempting, but first of all, I wouldn't want to sit there with a suit, but well, not with a business suit, but more like with something to swim in. But it probably will not look like this. What I do think is that this dramatically accelerated trend towards remote work actually helped people and companies to see the benefits of such arrangements, because there are benefits. Of course, they come with costs and drawback, but there are benefits. So I think for employers, they are going to get better morale from people. So if you remember what I said before, what employers are supposed to do to encourage this and to make this possible, if they do all these things, then I think they are going to get these benefits. Better morale, so happier people usually. Better results. It's not a secret and it's not amazing that people who feel better also perform better, which also results in higher productivity. So it's not just about the kumbaya things or the soft part of the equation, where you say that, yeah, my people are happy, that's awesome. No, it's also awesome from a hard point of view, from a financial point of view. You will get higher productivity. And in the end, you are going to have happier clients, which, if you're being honest, is something that unites employers and employees at the same time, because the clients are the only ones who can really fire everybody. If they decide not to work with us and not to buy our services and products, we are pretty much screwed. So I think that there are a lot of benefits for the employer. What they need to do, as I said before, and just summarizing it here with the most important things, they need to put people first. If the employer takes care of the people in the organization, they are going to take care of the rest. And this is what employers need to trust in. So trust in the people, trust that they are not inherently bad and lazy suckers, but they actually want to do good things. On the other hand, I think the employees are going to get this freedom and flexibility, which you mentioned before. And this is of course something nice, right? So if you get this freedom and flexibility, but it only works if you also have a certain amount of discipline. So you need, or we need, everybody who is working from home, find ways to get into this work mindset and actually really be productive. Because it doesn't help us if we actually get away with being lazy. Yes, probably you could spend a couple of weeks or even months at home, honestly just working 3 or 4 hours a day and spend the rest doing anything else. But eventually this is going to catch up, because there's one drawback working from home for us as employees and contributors. And this is that the only thing that people see of us is actually what we are going to produce, is our results. You know, at the office, there's always this guy who is, I don't know, super nice and super funny and everybody likes him, and yeah, his results are not so great, but because he's so nice and you meet him on the floor and he always has a joke and remembers your kids' names, oh, nobody worries, it's okay. But we don't have this anymore. Now you can be nice at home with your family, but it doesn't help you at the office because people only see what you produce. They only see the quality and the quantity of your output. So discipline is definitely something that we are going to need there. I think somebody mentioned before, I'm not quite sure, but we see already today that people are asking us if they can also keep working from home once this whole COVID-19 situation is resolved. So as I said, not everybody, but quite a few people realize that it's actually not so bad to be working from home. And once they don't have to, but actually choose to do so, it will be even nicer. So if they have the opportunity to either go to the office or stay at home, and it is a choice rather than an obligation, it will be much more appreciated. So before COVID-19, we had a working from home policy, which allowed people to do so to a certain extent. And we're already preparing for post-COVID-19 in an updated policy, which would go much further. So roughly speaking, we would probably say that at any given time, 30% of people are allowed to work from home. Obviously not always the same 30%, so this needs to be a bit planned and coordinated, but in general, 30% of the organization doesn't have to be at the office at any given time. That's our current idea, our current draft. We will see what exactly it's going to be in the end, but it's definitely much more than we had before this whole situation. Now, from an employer's point of view, this also makes a lot of sense, because if you think it's a bit further, you would suddenly see that you need 30% less workspace at the office. So either you can save money by having smaller offices, or you can actually make money by leasing out this space, depending on the situation at the office, etc. But there are a lot of potential benefits from an employer side as well. However, I don't think it's ever going to be just one or the other, so just working from home or just working from the office. I think it also hasn't been so far, right? So even now we had this hybrid setup or this combination, if you like. What I do believe is that the focus is going to shift a bit. So from being mostly working from the office and a bit working from home, I think this is going to switch the other way. I think we're going to see that a lot of people will prefer to work more from home than from the office. But this is actually going to be the only real difference between pre-corona, post-corona in the end, I think. All right, in conclusion, and I think I'm fairly well in time, if I'm not mistaken, I have like 3 minutes left. I don't know how I do that. In conclusion, what people tend to call the new normal is rather old, really. It's not a new pair of shoes, it's the same old thing. The difference is that distributed work actually evolved from being team-based in an office or professional environment to being cell-based in a private environment. And that's the main difference here. We also know and can conclude that when preparing to work remotely, the technical challenges might be big, but they're usually much easier to solve than those related to humans and their own well-being. I also want to stress once again that none of the solutions which are shared today are one-time measures. These are things that need to be monitored and continued and adapted and changed and enhanced again and again and again. This is an endless cycle, or at least until this whole situation changes again. There's no way around doing this continuously. And last but not least, the future of working in distributed agile teams has changed faster than expected, but it did not change into a wholly unexpected direction. We have already been on this course. So it's not like we were completely pushed in a direction that nobody saw coming and nobody was prepared for. All in all, I think the only constant, as always, is change itself. And I think all of us should embrace this change and grow with it. I don't think we can resist it. And if we grow with it, it doesn't matter whether it's a small change or a tidal wave. And yes, you might struggle with this, but I think in the end, you are going to find yourself riding this wave of change rather than being washed away by it. And this would be my official end of the slides. There is one more thing on a related note. Camilla mentioned in the beginning that we're going to have a bit of a contest where we're also going to present prizes. So a lot of the information I shared today is coming from our own experience, of course, but also from different literature. I want to share with you quickly what this literature is, and we can also share the links and everything later if you like. First, there is a book called Remote. It's not very new. I think it was written in 2003 or 2007. So the tool recommendations in there might be a bit outdated, but the ideas themselves are still very, very current. So if you're looking for ideas and inspiration about working remotely, either for yourself or your whole organization, you could do much worse than picking this book. The second one is by now probably a classic. It's Leaders Eat Last. From there comes a lot of inspiration about how to take care of people, why you would take care of people, and what it takes actually to be seen as a leader. And spoiler alert, it's not a job title. The third one I would like to recommend here is The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. It's a very short book, and it focuses on the problems that you experience in teams and why teams are, or what it takes actually for teams to become functional, and the other way around, what keeps them from being functional. It's a very nice book. It's written a bit like a story. So it's about a new CEO taking over a company, and the management team is highly dysfunctional. Very realistic story, probably, actually, now that I think about it. So highly dysfunctional management team, and this new CEO, she has to make them work, right? And then the story goes through the different dysfunctions there are and how they're related to each other and how to solve each of those in turn. And then there is Leading Change. I mentioned before, this again, it's a classic in my opinion. If you're in any way involved in changing things, or if you want to change things, whether it's in your organization or in your private life, again, highly recommended to read this book. It helps you with 8 steps to explain how to implement change and how not to just change behaviors, but actually, eventually, over the long run, how to change culture of organizations. And the last one I mentioned before already, Atomic Habits from James Clear. Very nice book explaining how small changes can have a huge impact and huge benefit. A lot of very practical things which you could start applying tomorrow. So, quick example, if you would like to eat more fruits, but your fruits and your apples are hidden in your camara, your pantry, then it's a good idea to just take the fruits and put them into a nice bowl onto your kitchen table. And just by seeing them there, every time you walk by, you're definitely going to eat more of them. It's a small change with a huge impact. Of course, there are also business-related topics in there, and all in all, it's a really, really nice book. Now, how you're going to be able to win or to get one of these books is something that Carmelia is going to explain, right?
Yes. So we are going to talk about how you're going to get these prizes. Afterwards, we have the request for you to please give us a feedback. You will have the link for feedback, and then questions and answers. There is Ovidiu having a question about budgeting, and then I have 2 remarks at least. But going back to the prizes, so we always share on Facebook what we do here on our programs or trainings or events and all of it. So our colleague from marketing has posted on Facebook this this post, okay, which is which is here on chat. The 4 or 3 people, Sasha, the 4, right? There are 4 books?
Yes.
Okay, so the 4 people, the first 4 people who will add a comment at that post, either giving some examples of how they implemented some steps in remote work, or some other ideas, or even a question or a feedback, anything. The 4 comments will receive one of those books. Will there be in the order of the first comment is the first book, the second comment, the second book? Sasha, the order?
They can be, for sure, yeah.
Okay, okay. So that is, and if I'm not mistaken, together with the book, there will also be an object, right? And Sasha will show it, an object inscripted with 3SS. Can you show it on the screen? Or do you have a picture with it? Or you have
Actually,
a picture with it?
I did not get a picture, to be honest.
Just tell us the object.
Well, yeah, honestly, I wouldn't want to spoil it. So the thing is, what we have, maybe as an explanation, when people join us at Research, we have something called a joiner pack, right? So it's a bunch of things that our joiners get. It ranges from pens to notebooks to sunglasses to nice little gadgets, right? And
a kit.
Some of those gadgets we are going to add to the books.
Okay. And the 4 first comments, I will get in contact with you and get the address, the physical address where you live, so we can ship during this week. Hopefully by the end of this week, we can ship, or the beginning of next week, we can ship the objects to you as a memory of this meetup that we just had.
Exactly.
Now, just 2 minutes, please. It won't take long. Just now, live, fill in this feedback while I just add a remark to something that Sascha said. You can hear me while you write because it's not something complicated. And then Ovidiu can ask his question about budgeting. So you said something about not being really, or your colleague are less and less prone to join your fun activities, right?
Yeah.
And while you said it, I remembered something in Agile Hub, which is a voluntarily context. I mean, everyone who is a member of Agile Hub is a volunteer, comes here pro bono on their free time and so on, which means you actually want to be here, right? And during the lockdown, it was one thing, but we prepared an internal activity, a fun activity, right at the end of the lockdown, you know. And we had some colleagues that said, I cannot join, regardless what activity it is. I don't care. The king may come here. I am allowed to go outside. I'm going outside. So it wasn't, even if, or even though when we proposed that activity, many colleagues said, oh, really, it's nice. I would like to be part of that. When we actually implemented it, because it was at the end of the lockdown, less people joined than we would have wanted.
Yeah.
Okay. And another remark was, you said that you are not that sociable, right?
Me personally,
said that
yes.
at the
beginning. Not our company.
Yeah,
yes.
This is not your strongest point. And
no.
I would like to ask you, before Ovidiu asks his question, is how comfortable, or do you participate in those fun activities? How comfortable are you? If not, how do you get past that? What's your strategy? So for those who are more introverts, right? What your advices are? What do you do?
How to get over this not being social and to actually... That's probably the hardest question I had today.
Okay, it wasn't intended, so...
No, it's fine. It's a fair question. I don't think I'm in a position to actually give advice because I'm really not very good at overcoming this myself. So I also have difficulties participating in these fun activities. For me, if I'm being completely honest, I very often use the fact that I don't speak Romanian as an excuse, right? Because of course, everybody speaks English in our company. That's clear. It's our business language. But especially these fun activities, I think they're supposed to be fun. And I also feel a bit like maybe intruding, right? Because only because I am there, everybody suddenly has to speak English, whereas otherwise they wouldn't have to. So that's one of the excuses I use for myself, I think. How to overcome this and how to actually participate in the fun activities, I can't really say because I'm not. So it would be a bit hypocritical of me to try and give some advice here.
Okay, so you usually don't participate in them?
No, I don't.
Okay. Thank you for your honesty.
Always. Well, what else is there?
So now the budgeting question, if there is no other question, Ovidiu.
Yeah, so basically the question is, how does budgeting work without normalization? Because I know how it works with normalization, but how do you guys do it? And basically, do you have a system where you kind of decouple the story point estimation system from the budgeting, or how does that work in general?
Okay, so what we do is we are offering our clients something we call agile pricing, right? The idea being that we wanted to get away from having a contract for, I don't know, a year or 2 years with a defined amount of money for this long period, and partly at least a defined scope for the same period. So the typical waterfall approach that people used to have. We all know this is not really working well. So we got away from there, and we first changed the way we work towards agile, and now we also changed the way we offer and price things. And this agile pricing that we're doing, the main difference here is it's not based on person days, because so far this is what we have been doing, right? We said, okay, you want to have a certain amount of functionality. For this, we need a team, say 5 people or 10 people or whatever, for the next 6 months. This gives us 1,200 person days times a rate of X, bam, there's the cost, right? So this is how we used to do it. What we're doing now is we say, we are not going to give you a fixed price for a year. We are going to give you a fixed price for 1 program increment. And between program increments, you have the flexibility of changing direction, because this is what agile is all about. At the same time, once you have changed your direction and we know what is going to be the plan for the next program increment, you again get a fixed price. So this gives the client both advantages. First, it's very plannable in terms of money and budget. And second, they have flexibility. Now, in order to really make it plannable, we say in each PI, we estimate that we can do a certain amount of story points, and 1 story point costs X money. So therefore you get a budget per PI. Now for the story points themselves, let's assume we have 2 teams only on the specific train for the client. Team A has an idea what a story point is, and team B has an idea what a story point is. If we're at the very beginning of the project, and we don't know how many story points a team can actually achieve, we follow the safe recommendation of calculating theoretical story points, right? So you take a user story, you assume the effort for a small user story to develop and to test, so actually to get it done, is 1 day, and this is 1 story point. Then you multiply this by the people on the team, etc. So this is what we do in the beginning. But after a few after a few sprints, we actually have the experience of what people and teams can actually achieve. So let's assume we have this first team. The theoretical story point capacity for the team is 50 for a sprint. But after 2 and 3 sprints, we saw that the team achieved 30, 50, and 40 story points respectively. So we get an average of 40 story points. And then we would keep going from there and say, okay, from now on, we assume that we can do 40 story points. And with this know-how, we add it up towards the end of the PI and come up with the cost for the client. Now, why I said we have 2 teams is because the story point for team A could be something else than a story point for team B. For team A, it could actually mean, I don't know, 2 days in the end, whereas for the other team, it could be 1 day. But still, since both of these teams are working on the same train, their efforts and their story points add up, and therefore give us the respective price and the budget. Now, what we tell the client is, because of our experience, we know that we can deliver as a train 150 story points per PI, and 150 story points cost X0. And then we say, for each PI, you're going to have this X0, so your cost, your budget is not changing, and your story point number is probably also not changing, or if it does, in a very small range. But the scope, so what exactly we shall do in each PI, this is something we can still change. Does this make any sense?
So it's some sort of a bucketed system, basically. You have like the budget for the teams. This is what the customer pays. Let's say we're in the beginning. The first scenario would be, if you're in the beginning and you have no history of the team, then basically you would just say, yeah, let's budget the first 3 months, basically. And then after, we will look into what the train would be able to deliver, basically. And is that it?
Almost. There's
okay.
small thing, which I probably didn't explain well enough. By doing it this way, we actually decouple the price for the PI from the actual people or number of people working on it. So let's assume a good case.
Okay.
We start with a team of 5 people or 10 people. And after the first and second PI, people get so efficient, so good that we actually don't need 10 people anymore to achieve the same amount of story points. We can actually do it with 8. And suddenly our costs would actually be reduced by 20% on this project. But the price that we get from the client would remain the same because the client is paying for the result, for the value, not for the effort.
Okay.
You know?
Okay, I understand. So basically you actually, by having the history of what happened in the past, you actually know or you have a pretty good idea of what you can expect versus let's say the pricing model. So the pricing model is you're paying this amount for this amount of work delivered. The amount is in story points. You have a rough idea of how much people will be able to deliver based on previous experience from PIs, and this is basically the model that you're going with.
And we have a bit of an advantage here since we do the same thing again and again, right? We do nothing else but building these front ends. So we have a very good idea of how much work it is to build some front end that the client wants to have. And we also have the advantage that our people are very, very experienced in working together. So we actually never are in a situation where we have to go with a theoretical calculation. We always have a very good basis to estimate on. So even in the first PI or for a new client or new project, we are very close to the actual capability and capacity of the team, right? So this is the advantage there. The second thing is, and I want to highlight this, it also swings the other way. If we say as a client, you pay X euro for 150 or 200 story points per PI, and then it turns out we actually need 50% more people than we thought, then this is our problem, right? We don't go to the client asking for more money because the client is not paying for people, he's paying for value.
Okay, so it's a balanced risk, basically.
Yes, it is. It's fair, no? So it's a collaboration, it's a partnership between us and the client. And it's a shared risk. They share the risk that we need fewer people than we think, and we have the risk that we might need more.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. And we see that our clients, once they understand the model, which is not always so easy because it's not so intuitive, right? But once they understand it, we see that people actually appreciate it because they have planability. They know exactly how much cost they're going to have for the next PI or the next year if they want. And they still maintain the flexibility to change direction and adopt the scope of the PIs in between PIs. So it's a really nice approach. We have been doing this for like, I don't know, 3 years now, no, 2.5 years. And it's really working nicely.
Yeah, I think I got it.
All right, but it's a very good question.
Thanks.
Hi, I have a question. You mentioned that you try to work and not base your communication on meetings. Did you feel any kind of difference in meeting participation from when you were working in distributed teams from the office versus working in distributed teams remotely from home? With regards of how people focus on the meetings, if they are more engaged or less engaged, if they feel some sort of a burned out because they have meetings one after the other, things like that.
So yes, we do notice differences. In the beginning, when this whole thing was relatively new, it was indeed the case that people were not as focused or efficient. There were a lot of interruptions and so on. And back then, also the other participants reacted more strongly to interruptions. So I don't know, when one of my kids were running in right now, none of you would make a fuss, right? Because come on, by now we're all used to it. But at the beginning, this was probably a bit of a disturbance. However, now towards the end, what we actually see is that because there is this constant risk of interruptions and because they are so busy, people tend to be more efficient in meetings. So I frequently step into daily Scrum calls that we have in different projects, right? And I kid you not, people go in there, yes, in the beginning, good morning, how are you doing, la la la, all fine. But within 2 minutes, they are down to business, they go through the stuff, and after 15 minutes, everybody is back out of it. So they tend to be more efficient, even in the management team, and this is actually a huge achievement. We are trying to keep meetings and calls to like 30 minutes. We're not managing with each and every one, but only today we had one. I was hosting one of them, and I was the timekeeper. So after 30 minutes, I stopped it, right? And this really, it helps people to focus on the task at hand. It takes away all the useless blah blah in the beginning, but of course you still have some time for social interaction. So it's not like we're suddenly machines doing nothing else but work. We still do jokes and so on. But all in all, you have this sense and this feeling of higher focus and higher efficiency without anybody pushing for it, but because people feel that it's necessary to work this way. And in terms of frustration, yes, like we also said before in the actual presentation, we do see that. It's not, I don't think it's so much about being in calls or in meetings, but it might contribute as well. So some of the feedback we received after this Halloween attempt, this online Halloween attempt, was that, guys, I like the idea, I appreciate the effort, I think it would be fun, but honestly, I'm sitting in front of the screen 8 hours a day. I don't feel like another 2 hours, even if it's for a fun event in the evening, right? So yes, it also bleeds over into this direction.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question?
Well,
Sascha, sorry.
If you don't mind, I might have a couple of questions, maybe, if that's okay, because I'm curious and I think we still have a bit of time.
Yeah.
So my questions would be, so you personally, if there is one thing, right, that you could change or get while you're working from home still in this situation, what would that actually be? Very brainstorming, like from the top of your head without thinking too much.
Buy a bigger apartment and have a separate room for my own office.
Yes, I can understand that.
Ditto.
Same here.
Yeah. So it's really
Waking up earlier.
Okay. Yeah, honestly,
I would like to get into.
Yes.
Yeah, I would like to get into the discipline because I lost it. So I lose it and I get it back, and I lose it and I get it back into the discipline of really working out in the morning, early in the morning. But because, yeah, I don't have to get anywhere. It's just, I will postpone it a little bit and then a little bit, and I need to cook, and then we need to forget about sport.
Yes,
and
I know the feeling.
Yeah.
So maybe, so 2 short notes. So first of all, thank you. And the first part with needing more space or needing a separate space for working, this is something I hear a lot, right? So like I said also in the presentation, not everybody is so lucky that they actually have a separate room to work in. A lot of people do it in the living room, in the kitchen, in the bedroom, whatever. Quick note there, what also can help, not just for yourself, but for the people around you, your family, is to explain to them, okay, guys, when I'm in this corner of the kitchen, I am working, all right? Then you really try and leave me. Don't forbid, I need to focus there. I'm working here. When I'm out of this corner, I'm all yours. It's fine. And if you don't even have a corner, but you're really doing it in, I don't know, the living room where everybody else is as well, it might even help to say, okay, when I have my headphones on, I'm in work mode. It's not that I don't want to be with you, but I really need to focus on this stuff. So these kind of things can already help there. And the other thing with getting back into the habit of working out, I fully get it. So I like it a lot to have worked out, right? So after working out, I always feel great. It's just that during workouts is the period which sucks for me. So that's really tricky. But once again, also in this Atomic Habits book, they have a nice example there, a nice proposal. They say, whenever you're in the situation where you want, okay, yeah, I know I should work out, or actually I also kind of want to work out, but there are other things to do and I'm lazy. Ask yourself, what would a fit person to do? Because why do you want to work out? You want to work out to be fit, right? To be physically fit and feel better and ideally live longer, hoping that it's worth it. So what would a fit person do? What would the person do that you want to be? And I have to say, for me, this kind of helps. So I try to do some sort of physical activity at home. Well, the goal is 4 times a week, but if I manage 3 times a week, I'm very happy. And this question, in the mornings, I'm lying in bed, I don't want to get up. What would a fit person do? So,
I have a suggestion for this.
Yes.
For example, if you're doing workouts at home online and you're following someone on YouTube, let's say, they are real people and they also can post, for example, on Instagram or Facebook. And if you follow them and see, okay, they are doing this, and you wake up every morning and you see, okay, she's doing it. I'm gonna do it because she's real, she's fit, and yeah, I see her doing it and her telling her story every day and seeing what she eats or what she does. That works for me perfectly, even better than the gym. And I work out almost 4 or 5 times a week since the pandemic started, and I'm fitter than I was before, to be honest. So
that's a very good idea.
It works when you follow real people who do the same things that you're doing, and you're in the mood together.
That's really nice. I like that. What also works or can work, I know it depends on the people, of course, is if you're into social media and you have a lot of, I don't know, friends or followers or whatever they are called, to actually say, okay, I'm going to start a new fitness regimen, and in the next, 12 weeks, I want to have that many workouts. And then you actually share your progress there. So you put a bit of pressure on yourself, right?
Yes, that's good. That's also good.
I can also share something on this because I actually can share a success. I've been successfully working out for the past month. After 6 months of not doing anything.
Keep going.
Being the worst person. So I first of all gave up the expectation of working out in the morning.
Yep.
Because I actually started to I started this pandemic with a very good work ethic, and it went really bad, really fast. So now I actually do my workouts around 11 up to lunch. So that was one thing that helped. The other thing was I started doing calisthenics, which is like working
without
out
weights.
just with, without weights. So that made it ridiculously simple. And I would say that can also be helpful. That's
Yeah, I think that's true. I also like calisthenics, so I'm doing the same. And for me, the time slot to do it is actually in the evening, just before the kids need to take a bath, right? Because then I get sweaty and work out, and then I can wash together with them. So it also fits into our daily schedule somehow. Makes it easier, Oh, another thing that makes it easier is to visualize your series. So if you say you have been working out, I don't know, frequently, like daily or every other day, whatever your schedule is, visualize it. Because amazingly, if you see a series of things going on, you don't want to break it. You want to see it continue. You want to keep it going. Very funny. I didn't think of that before. I also got it from this book, Atomic Habits, but it's true. And if it's a stupid list of lines that you do every time you complete it, or you have a calendar and you cross out the days where you did it or whatever, and even if it's just for yourself.
But here is the tricky part, because it is related to that principle of abandoned houses. When does a house or a building that's abandoned get vandalized? It's with the first broken window. So that's the trick because once you miss one day of training and you see that line interrupted, bang, it's all gone.
Or you feel guilty.
It's anyway interrupted. So tomorrow you find excuses.
There's a Boy Scout rule that you might find useful. It's called leave the place better than you found it. So basically, okay, you missed one day, but are you going to be healthier or happier or more energetic if tomorrow you're going to work out or if you're not? That's kind of the thing.
Yep.
So it's
actually,
too much pressure. I guess that's my feedback.
And it's nice because Ovidio's success story actually takes me to my second question. So basically, since we are working from home and have to be working from home at this situation, did you experience any sort of benefit or advantage in this situation? And if so, which one?
Of course, there are many advantages. Sorry, it was for you, the question? I didn't
No,
get
no,
it.
all of you.
Okay.
Making my own schedule. That's the
Yes.
obvious advantage.
Maybe having a week working from a remote place where, you feel good and you can just travel around. Even though there are restrictions, you can still do this at minimum, but you can. Also having your own schedule, maybe eating better because you can cook, or it's not just the lunch at work, half an hour or 1 hour at the canteen where you get only what they give you. You can analyze and live healthier, I think. But you need discipline, of course, to get to that point.
Yes, or a wife in my case.
Yes.
She is my discipline. But so there are good things as well, right? It's not all bad.
It's not, definitely.
Another advantage, another advantage is that you really are happy to see your colleagues. So even those that annoyed you at the beginning, now it's, oh, hi, how was your day?
True. And you see authentic reactions on their faces when you meet, or even in video calls. You have a video call with someone you didn't see in a while. You're like, hi, how are you? So you're smiling all the way. And that's true.
Yep, very true.
Also, we don't spend time on traveling by car or by bus. So we are winning a lot of time.
And money.
Jam. But if you have this money, you have to think how to spend them. So
that's a bit problem.
Buy a bicycle, buy something like
per hour car.
So I do have one more question related to what you said, and then see if anybody else has another question, and if not, we can close up. So my question was, you said ask for help. Everyone has a mentor, and if not your mentor, go to anyone else and ask. Can you give us some examples of what kind of help your colleagues asked for? So is it acceptable to say in your teams, in your company, is it acceptable to say, oh, I can't, my child didn't sleep well last night. I had to stay by his side. Or I can't be in this meeting.
So what we get a lot. What we do get quite frequently is these kind of requests, right? Where something happened in private life, more or less tragic, unfortunately as well. And then they suddenly need to, I don't know, can't work or cannot work as they promised, or have to even leave for a longer period, etc. And then they do ask for help and flexibility from mostly their own peers, so from people on the team, because sometimes these people to who this happens, they feel like letting their teams down, right? But I think, as far as I can see, at least, that the teams react very positively usually. They understand, because it can happen to everyone, right? An example, we do have some cases in the company who either were COVID-19 positive or had direct contact with a positive person. And this is, for many people, a sensitive topic, and not everybody is super happy with sharing this with colleagues. But of course, in a situation where you have a person that went to the office in a period where this infection could have already been there, you need to inform others, right? So this is also where they ask for help, and where we are happy to help, especially from HR side, with the communication, where we try to limit this information to the relevant people. So some sort of contact tracing, with whom could you have been in touch, whom did you meet, etc. And then we just inform this group. Or if it was really the full office, then yes, of course, you would inform the respective location, but not necessarily the whole company. So it's usually about private things, personal things that happen in people's lives where they come and ask for help, because everything else which is related to business, this is not new. They have been doing this and they have been able to do this since forever, right? If it's about something professional, whether it's a device or a setup or a configuration or whatever stuff, this is not new. They could have done this all the time anyway.
Okay. Thank you. So, are there any other questions? Or we... Then a remark, because and now it's a full circle, right? Because you started with you declaring that you're not being that sociable and so on, but here you were sociable and you talked a lot and you shared a lot of stories and you interacted a lot. So perhaps just a thought, what about having an online meeting, not a fun online meeting, an idea or a struggle online meeting? So
a struggle online meeting?
Yeah, what struggles do you have? What struggles do you face? Ask for advice. This kind of online meetings, not just fun ones, because whenever I participate in something fun, for me it's high expectation. Oh, I have to be really positive. I have to be, so it's not like, oh, I'm tired, I can't. No, it's always so I saw this kind of ideas and interaction here, and I was just imagining myself, what would it be like, or how would it be for this kind of meeting with this kind of subject to be actually a meeting inside a company, you know?
Yes, it's certainly a very nice idea. I mean, for myself, before I started working with 3SS a long time ago, actually, I had the idea of having these how would we call this? Fireplace chats, right? So I have my own company, and my idea was to actually get a bunch of people together physically at the time, coming to my place and actually sit at the fireplace and discuss whatever kind of topics, whether this is about agile or business or family and how to deal with everything, I don't know, and do that. So this kind of discussion, yes, I think I could like that.
Okay. Thank you very, very much for your attendance, for your participation, for your interaction, for your interest in Agile Hub and all that we do. If you don't know much about us, just follow us on Facebook and peakit.ro. If you have experience in any kind of IT area and want to spend your free time teaching others, please drop us an email. And we expect you to our next meeting, which will be next Wednesday on 2nd of December. It's a talk, it's a conversation about testing with James Buck, the famous James Buck. It's actually the thing that really is interested is that things add up to one another. So this wasn't planned. It just came to my table as a next step, because at PIT we had during lunch some networking discussions, and the second half an hour from the first day of PIT we had a round table and we talked about testing, and a participant there liked it really much, and he knows James Buck, and this is how things connect. So who knows where this meetup will lead to. I like things connecting to one another. So we invite you to all our programs. Follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and next year, PIT. Thank you, Sascha.
Thank you all for your patience and the interesting discussion. I really like it. It was more interactive than these things usually are.
Yeah.
So that was good. Then once again, I hope I didn't bore you too much. Have a very nice evening, everyone. If there are any other questions, you can easily contact me. So
You too.
be
Take
good,
care.
yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And I will
Bye.
contact the ones
Thank
with
you.
comments, okay?
Yeah.
I will contact you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.